guys ready? So today we are joined by Otto. Alex is currently the Director of Branded Entertainment at TLC, which is owned by Discovery Communications. And in this position, she develops, pitches, and produces breakthrough custom branded entertainment solution for clients. So her unique space is in combining the content with the advertising to make valuable stuff that people want to watch. She has also worked for NBC Universal as well as CBS, Paramount, and international television. So I am very much excited to hear about her experiences within conglomerates. She's also worked at Defy Media, which is a smaller startup. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And just so you know, actually, we'll start off with an example from you, Alex. She sent me a few ads that she's worked on, or a few spots, that she has worked on, all of which were just nominated for Telly Awards, which are prominent awards in media creation. So, stop reaching for that computer. Let me cut to this really quick. Oh, we were giving you that whole thing without seeing this. There we go. So this is Alex. And she has a bachelor's from Columbia in political economy. So I was really excited for her to join us, especially because most of you are not Newhouse majors, or you're transferring, or either way, you all have a background in something other than media. And so I'm really hoping that she'll talk about the value in bringing other disciplines into the study of media. So if you guys can give her a round of applause, please. Awesome. And then you'll look at me, and then I'll turn you around so you can see them. How are you?
Good. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Wonderful. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So currently I work at TLC in branded entertainment, which really is the intersection of both creative and advertising. The way it works is we create custom content for our advertisers that tie to our network brands in some way. So really a lot of my job is really sitting in between the network. Yep. So we're trying to protect the brand and all the brand attributes, and also protect our talent and how we want to communicate, how we want to represent ourselves in the marketplace as TLC. At the same time, we also work with brands, sales goals, and their major copy points as well in the creative that we produce.
Like you said, I apologize. You were working at the intersection of brands and really paying attention and promoting their needs while simultaneously synchronizing with TLC's brand and needs.
Correct. Well put.
Excellent. I'm good at that. That's what they hired me for. So how did you get into this?
So I started off with internships, and I really think that's a really, really important thing for everyone to be doing. I started off with internships at Nickelodeon and MTV networks. These were unpaid internships, really just to get my foot in the door and start meeting people. So that was really pivotal to my kind of career growth, but also gave me something, it shows that you've already been there in those environments and you know what those environments need and what you need to do. So really showing off those professional skills. And really, I did 2 unpaid internships in order to then land my first job. Yep, those were at Nickelodeon and MTV. I did those in my senior year of college, which was at Paramount Pictures in the international department.
So actually, tell us a little bit about what you do on a day-to-day basis. So we talked a little bit about the theoretical stuff that you do, but on a day-to-day basis, actually connecting brands and advertisers with content. How does that actually work?
Okay, so every day is different, which is why the way the process works in order to create content is sales reaches out to our ad sales marketing team, and they create an RFP for us. And then the RFP is a request for project or request for proposal. So we will get essentially an email or a one-page document that outlines the brand as all of their brand attributes and their brand copy points. We also get information about the media buy that they've spent on the network, which then helps us decide what kind of production budget that we're allowed to do. So we take all of that all of that information that we have in our RFP, and we go off and we ideate. So we will come up with a number of ideas based off of what the client goals are, that we then write up and pitch back to the sales team. The sales team will then go to the client and pitch those ideas, and then anything that gets purchased, my group then goes and executes. So for us, that really means creative soup to nuts. So we write, we hire production companies, we work with editors, and we finish everything for air. So it's really primarily the biggest two buckets of my job are ideating for our advertisers to get them on board and get them excited, and secondarily, really producing that best-in-class custom content for them. So no 2 days are alike, which is really, really what I enjoy about it.
Quick question. So how many of you would like to go into advertising or be at all involved in advertising? All right. So it's like a solid, good handful. Hands up, just so you can see. Awesome. So you can see how many people are involved, are excited about it. So what do you like about your job? What do you enjoy doing on a day-to-day basis? And I guess I have two questions. What do you enjoy doing on a day-to-day basis? And how is what you do different from sort of traditional advertising?
Sure. So what I enjoy about my job, and I've said this before, was that every single day is different. Every client is different, every product is different, every show is different, and every project is different. So it really gives you a chance to really be as creative as possible, because you're kind of given these guide rails to work against, and they seem really silly sometimes because you're told to, you guys just saw in that Hillshire spot that we really had to throw in a line about the sausages being pre-seasoned. And it's a really clunky line, but for us, part of the creative fun is trying to figure out a way to get that line in there where it doesn't feel super gross and like yucky and over the top that they're beating you with advertising. So it's really a lot of creative challenges that I find really interesting. And every single day is different. Every client is different. Every project is different. So it's never the same thing every single day, which I find really exciting. Every single challenge is different. Sharice, what was the second question?
I think I think you answered both. It was what makes the advertising that you do different from sort of traditional advertising?
Sure. So the biggest difference for what we do based off of traditional advertising is aligning network goals with goals of your advertisers. So you need to make sure you're protecting your brand as the network, but at the same time, you need to promote all of the marketing copy points that the advertiser is giving you. So it's really that intersection in the middle that's really interesting, where it's really the intersection of creative and business that creates really unique challenges creatively and from a business perspective.
Right. So then my question, I have two questions. I'd love to hear about your experiences in working for large conglomerates as opposed to a smaller startup. I think now in the current media environment, everybody wants to start a startup or work at a startup. So what has been your experiences in working in the sort of big media business sphere?
I know this isn't a popular opinion, but I actually enjoy working in these large media conglomerates. You have such a large portfolio of brands that you can work against. That's really exciting. Also, there's just so much gravitas behind these large brands. They're so well respected. Everyone knows what you're doing. And in terms of creating content, you're getting a lot of eyeballs. You're not necessarily having to fight for eyeballs as much as you were with a smaller company. So you can really focus on the creative and making really great content instead of having a large uphill battle to getting those eyeballs onto your content in the first place. I did work at a small startup digital media company for a while. It was a really great experience, but you spend so much time just trying to fight for those eyeballs as opposed to creating content. So that was really an uphill battle for me. The other kind of opinion I have is when I was first getting one of my first jobs at Paramount, the HR person said something to me that was really interesting and has stuck with me for a long time, which is that it's much easier to go from a really large company to a small company. So that does mean going from a large media conglomerate down to a little startup versus the other way around. The media industry in Hollywood is so very much hung up on these big studios. And and these big channels and these big media conglomerates. So it's much easier to jump between jobs if you do have experience at one of those larger companies. But it's much easier to be fluid when you have had some of that big company experience.
I would also like to point out that Alex is joining us from California. I forgot to mention that she's currently in Los Angeles. So thanks for getting up and joining us in the morning.
Anytime.
So one of my other questions I would like you to talk about, I want you to talk a little bit about what it's like to work in media without a media or communications degree. And I'd also like you to talk about perhaps a favorite project that you've worked on. Let's start with the second one, a favorite project that you've worked on. I also asked her to send me a list of brands that she has created content for, and the list is impressive, so I wrote it down. P&G, Procter & Gamble, Walmart, Lowe's, Maybelline, L'Oreal, Geico, State Farm, Liberty Mutual, Dove, Kentucky Fried Chicken, which is now KFC, not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Sprint, IKEA, Amex, Capital One, Coca-Cola, Staples, and so on. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about a favorite project that you had, how it came together, and why it's one of your favorite projects.
Sure. And just to touch upon that list that you mentioned, that was just a list of companies that I've worked with in probably the last 6 months, is that I get the opportunity to work on a ton of different brands, which is really fun and exciting. So I don't have to think about Hillshire sausage for 1 year. I think about it for maybe 2 months. And then I move on to the next brand.
So then what is one of your favorite projects that you've had the opportunity to work on?
About this on the phone. Unfortunately, I didn't give you a sample of it, but when I was at NBC Universal, one of the most creatively challenging projects I worked on was for TurboTax. I know tax season is upon us, and a lot of people are thinking about that, but for us, we were thinking about tax season all year long. Why I say it's one of my favorite projects is because every single year we had to find a unique way to make taxes interesting and fun for our viewers. And we didn't just have to make them fun for one channel. At that time, I was working cross-property, which meant I worked across the entire NBCU portfolio. So we were making content for multiple channels that all had to tie into a single campaign. So one of my favorite projects, because it was such a creative challenge, but also the same fact that they came back every single year because they loved the creative that we produced, so they came back year over year. So that I think was really interesting. And you know, I have to say I'm glad I'm off that brand, but it was, you know, one of the more difficult but yet rewarding projects that I got to work on.
So I would love for you to talk a little bit about what it means to work in media as someone with a non-communications degree. What has been your experience? What has been your unique space? What has been difficult? How has it helped you, etc.?
Yeah, so I majored in political, not really have a robust communications or media opportunities. So while I was in school, I did something similar to you guys and took what classes and opportunities were available to me. So for me, that meant I took a couple of classes at Columbia Business School in media because those were the only ones available. Into this industry was really my internships and getting that on the ground training. Hollywood is still very much a hierarchy. And I think that applies to ad agencies as well, where you really need to start at the bottom. And whether that means being a production assistant or just an assistant in answering phones, you kind of have to do your due diligence in the field. It's much more valuable to get that on the ground experience. I don't require a communications degree because I think the industry is changing and moving so fast that actual on-the-job training is actually much more valuable. As long as you're a critical thinker and have a creative mind, those are the most important things to me. And I think obviously if you're going to a great school like you guys are, you've already proven that you know how to be a critical thinker. So really not having that communications degree wasn't a huge hindrance to me. However, you do have to start at the bottom. And that can be hard to do sometimes, but you really have to work your way up and make those network connections that you have across the board and really kind of work it. Internships and starting at the bottom is going to be really a recipe for moving up and success.
Very briefly, how have you been able to actually deploy your degree in political economy in media industry in your day-to-day work?
Yeah, so for me, it's really been the aspect of living in between the worlds of creative and business and sale, and how the world works in a bigger picture, and not only be focused on how to make a great piece of film and a great piece of content. Well-rounded employee that, you know, I try and strive for, but also whom I look for when I'm doing hiring. You know, film majors are amazing and they do great stuff, but they might not have that other perspective that you need within the workplace.
Excellent. Thank you. So I'll put it out for, are there any questions? Do you guys have any questions for Alex? EJ's got a question up here. Thank you, EJ. Do you want to come down and ask it that way?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you too.
Okay.
Okay. Awesome.
Alex, nice to meet you.
You too.
Thank you for speaking to us today. But when you're working on a project and you have a collective, how many people are traditionally within your collective if you're working on, let's say, the Hillshire Farm commercial or the Turbotax? Just how many people, just out of curiosity?
It takes a village. We like to say that you can't do good creative by committee, but what ends up happening is you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen. So you have people on my end that are essentially producing the creative, but then you have the input of the network, and everything that we do gets filtered through our SVP of marketing for TLC. Then our other layers, you have our ad sales marketing folks who kind of have an eye and ear for the client, and it goes through their filter. And then finally, we go back to the client. So there's really probably like 4 or 5 cooks in the kitchen on any project at any one time. And when I say cooks in the kitchen, I don't mean one person. I mean that's like a separate team. So everything is very deliberate and very strategic. And there's also a lot of internal and external eyeballs on every single project and every single step we do prior to it even making air. So there's a lot of people working on every single thing that we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
So the extent to which consumers are integrated and the consumer needs are integrated into branded content, I think that's a unique case of branded content that instead of it being the content between the commercials, or excuse me, the content between the programs, it really needs to rely on the value of the content itself. So can you talk a little bit about how audiences fit into this creative process for you?
Yeah, I mean, the old adage is true that content is king. Content is the most important thing that we're doing. We need to make sure we're telling a story and a narrative. And in terms of integrating, I guess, the viewers or real people into what we're doing, everything that we do, we're looking on social to see how people are reacting with brands on Facebook, on Twitter, you know, on Instagram. So very much we look to see how fans are interacting with their brand, actually super serving them content that they want and we know that they're going to engage with.
So for those of you who said that one of the list brands was one of your favorite brands, who was that? There were like 3 or 4 of you. Would anybody like to share one of those brands and how it fits in for you? Let's come to Ray, R-E-Y.
R-A-E.
R-A-E, my bad. Ray, and then Jamie, and then we'll close up. Ray.
One of my favorite, most memorable is Dove. Their commercials are really memorable about trying to make women feel beautiful. And one I can remember is an artist. Women describe themselves, and they're not describing themselves as beautiful as they truly are.
So I don't know if you can hear her, but basically, okay, that's fine. She said was talking about the Dove, effectively the Real Beauty campaign. But one of the advertisements that really spoke to her was when they asked, they brought in sketch artists and had the women describe themselves to the sketch artists, and they weren't as pretty as a friend describing them. Do you know this advertisement?
Yeah, it's a really powerful campaign. It's really well done. The other one that's similar that that's been around for a little while that I recommend looking at. I can't remember the exact advertiser off the top of my head, which is a bad thing because it means they didn't brand it enough. Was that they set up office buildings and they labeled one door, another door is beautiful, and so women were more likely to walk through the average door than they were the beautiful door. I have a feeling that was Kellogg's when they were doing the whole step on the scale, and it doesn't tell you your weight, it tells you like you're confident. Do you remember that? I do. I don't know if it was that for this one, but I have to say some important things is you need to make sure your brand is there.
Right. Absolutely. So then on that note, and actually we've got 2 more minutes, but Jamie, do you want to mention what your favorite part is?
Like, I also like Dove, and one thing I spoke to you with Love Your Curls. Like, yeah, like I'm biracial, so like I naturally have curly hair, and like my younger sister, like my parents permed my hair when I was younger, and my little sister was like dying for like a perm, and I was like, no, don't do it. And I think that commercial like was really fun.
So she was also bringing up the Dove Love Your Curls campaign. So on that note, I think I'm going to close with asking you, what recommendations would you give to a student who is interested in doing what you do?
So I would say 3 things. Get an internship. It doesn't matter if it's paid or unpaid, just get companies, a media company, or an advertising agency. Starting from the bottom is okay. And then 3rd, I would say make content. YouTube is an incredible platform. You know, if you're into photography, go to Instagram. When you're ready to start applying for jobs and you want a job in the creative space, showing anything that you're doing is going to be really powerful. It doesn't matter if it was for professional reasons or not, but just showing your passion and your creativity in whatever outlet you choose is going to go a long way, and really just demonstrate to hiring managers that you want to be here and this is your passion and this is the kind of the dream job that you want, or it's a stepping stone onto the dream job that you want.
I'm sorry that the internet is not happy with us, but I really, really appreciate you coming out. Can we give her a round of applause, please? And telling us about all the interesting things you do. We'll definitely be incorporating this more in Thursday's lecture as well as we continue the discussion on advertising. Have a wonderful Tuesday, and I'll be in touch real soon.
Perfect. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.